I would suggest that if you have questions, he'll give you some time for questions, but also put them in the chat and I'll monitor the chat as well. Welcome, Dillon.
Thanks, Cindy. And thanks, Cheryl, for inviting me to talk about this stuff. Like Cindy said, I'm with the Superior Land Library Cooperative, which serves the public libraries here in the UP and a few of them in the northern lower region of the Lower Peninsula. I'm an MLA board member and I serve on their Intellectual Freedom Task Force, which just started meeting in March. It's relatively new. And the core of that task force work has been to create this My Right to Read coalition. So really happy Cheryl asked me to come talk to everybody about this. I've done it with some of the other co-ops advisory groups, and every time I find that there's at least one or two people there that are pleasantly surprised at some of the resources available. And I think all the co-op directors are on the same page about this. We want to really hit all of you over the head with this stuff. We want to make sure you know it's available because it's kind of crazy stuff going on related to these material challenges. So I'll just do like a 10 to 15 minute overview of the resources that are available on the My Right to Read Coalition website. And then like Cindy said, I'm happy to answer any questions as we go along or towards the end. When I summarize the coalition resources, I like to sort of break it down into a few different sections. So the core of My Right to Read Coalition is made up of a toolkit that MLA and the Intellectual Freedom Task Force has put together. The coalition also offers what we call like direct support or consulting with libraries that need help with a material challenge. And then we also have this element of the website that is our coalition, right? It's in the name, the My Right to Read Coalition. So I'll talk about those three things. And I should also just mention that the My Right to Read Coalition is sort of MLA's response to this huge uptick in material challenges that you are probably reading about and hopefully not experiencing at your libraries, but you may be. And the whole intent behind the coalition is just to be able to provide tools and quickly provide support when a library needs it. So the website has been live since early May. And since that time, it's seen updates almost every week. So check back even after you hear my spiel on what's available, because there's a lot added to it over time. I'll talk a little bit about the toolkit first. So this is one of the core pieces of the My Right to Read Coalition. If you click on resources in the header there when you're at the My Right to Read website, one of the first resources listed as you scroll down is the toolkit. So if you click on MLA's Intellectual Freedom Toolkit, it'll link back to MLA's website where they actually host the toolkit. The whole intent behind the toolkit is really to provide resources that help you be proactive in preparing for dealing with material challenges, and then also some tools for sort of backing that work up. So you'll find policy templates, for example. There is a collection development policy template, several of those, one of which came from the Lakeland Library Cooperative, who had an attorney in Michigan work on this policy template. And I think over half of the Lakeland libraries are using that. So just as an example, if you're in need of a collection development policy or you just, maybe want to update yours, take a look at that one. That's a really good example. There's also a policy template for a request for reevaluation of materials form. I always mention these two when we talk about the toolkit, because those are the two policies that you absolutely have to have in place before any material challenges head your way. Otherwise, you won't have a process for dealing with it, and it'll be even more chaotic and messy than it might already end up being. Another policy template that you can find in the toolkit is a crisis communication plan. So MLA worked with a firm in Michigan to develop this crisis communication plan template that you also might consider, adopting at the board level, or even just reviewing as a library director to kind of be familiar with how you might respond. So your collection development policy is going to lay out the process for dealing specifically with a material challenge issue, but this crisis communication plan might help your library sort of formulate a bigger response if a material challenge rises to the level of like playing out in a public board meeting and sort of being a crisis scenario for you. So that might be a helpful document as well. The toolkit also has good information that's sort of meant to help trustees understand their role and responsibilities when it comes to dealing with a material challenge, their roles and responsibilities related to library directors, right? So that they understand the process there and how collection development policies work. There's also some information that we're linking to from the Library of Michigan. Claire Membiela at the Library of Michigan has put together 2 really great documents that sort of summarize the legal precedent for content-based removal of library materials from school and public libraries. And I mention that because, again, when we talk about trustees, that's information that your board chairs absolutely need to understand well before having to deal with a material challenge, because it's really clear legally that material can't be removed from a library based on content. So we want to make sure trustees understand that before they find themselves in a board meeting where they're tasked with reviewing a formal request for removing a book or other material from the collection. And the other thing I wanted to mention about trustees is you can also find some information in the toolkit about the need for trustees and especially board chairs to understand how important it is to control a meeting. They need to understand Robert's rules and how to run a meeting when things get dicey, because otherwise they might respond in a way that just makes problems worse for your library. So some information like that in the toolkit as well. One thing that is just been added to the toolkit, and actually I think if you're at the MLA website where the toolkit is hosted, it's actually right next to it. It's called the Messaging Center, and this portion of the toolkit is still being built out a little bit, but the intent is that it'll provide social media templates and letter to the editor templates, tips on how to write letters to the editor. So that information can just be grabbed by, any of you can grab that and use it as needed and edit it as needed as well when you're working on putting out information to your community about something related to material challenges. Okay, so I'll talk a little bit next about what we call direct support, or sometimes we've talked about this as rapid response teams that are available to help libraries in need. So the way this works is when you're at the My Right to Read website, you'll see in the header there where there's this menu, there's this option to request support. And when you click request support, it's going to bring up a page where there's like a form you can fill out. This goes directly to Debbie McCula, the executive director at MLA. It's a confidential communication between you and Debbie. And you can let her know what you need, whether it's, maybe you just need to consult with someone to review a policy, or maybe you're in the thick of it with, ugly board meetings where people are showing up in opposition to some titles in your question, whatever it might be. You can fill that out and you'll hear from Debbie really quickly. Debbie is also working with the Michigan Cooperative Directors Association so that if there is a need regionally, and as long as the library requesting support gives the okay, Debbie can put you in touch with your cooperative director to provide support. So that's just kind of a capacity issue for MLA. As we see more and more of these requests come in, we know Debbie can't do it all. So the co-op directors are happy to help. And of course, you can just reach out directly to Cheryl too. The other thing to note here is just that MLA and the Cooperative Directors Association, and really all of our partner organizations in Michigan, like the Library of Michigan and MCLS, we work really well together. I think Cheryl will agree, especially the Cooperative Directors Association. It's a great group to work with. So when you reach out to Cheryl for support, you're not just asking Cheryl for help, right? If it's something Cheryl thinks someone else can help contribute a meaningful response to, she's going to reach out to us too. So a lot of support made available to you if you ask. We just want to make sure people know they can reach out. And the other element of requesting support that My Right to Read is really trying to do well is quick and immediate response. There's other organizations out there like ALA that do some of this similar work, but we're here for you in Michigan, and we're going to follow up with you, that day or the next day to find out how we can help. We don't want you to have to wait on this stuff. We're also just keeping each other informed as co-op directors on, what's going on regionally. And sometimes we're able to put libraries in touch with other libraries and other cooperatives who are dealing with similar challenge requests. So that's happened already before, whether it's, the same title that's in question, or maybe it's by library type, something unique about the scenario. we can pass that info on to each other. And then the third kind of core element I would mention is what we call the coalition support. So this is an element of My Right to Read that we haven't quite made use of yet. A lot of libraries, I kind of mentioned this already, they might only need to be pointed to a specific resource, or maybe they just want to consult with Cheryl or Debbie at MLA on how to handle, some element of a challenge. But when a library does need more pointed support, we can look to coalition members, with specific action items to help with these specific libraries. So when you join the coalition on the My Right to Read website, you're basically just giving you're giving your email address to the coalition, which I think has over 750 members now throughout the state. And that helps MLA build this broad coalition of library and intellectual freedom advocates that we can call on when we need to. As ugly as the material challenge stuff is already in some regions in Michigan, it's not quite as endemic as it is in other states that are seeing, legislation barring for libraries from purchasing certain materials and things like that. And so in the absence of that right now, the coalition is actually kind of just being used for, I guess what you would call educational purposes. We're trying to build a broad coalition of folks that are not necessarily librarians, teachers, lawyers, every profession you can think of, just regular citizens, because those are the folks, we might need someday at a board meeting to show up and advocate for a specific library.
Thanks.
So we're sending out a lot of
Sorry.
information right now to
Yes,
coalition
both of
members,
them were supposed to be handicapped.
just to make sure they understand the language we speak when we talk about intellectual freedom and material challenges and the importance of good collection development policies and professional and trained librarians. Folks want to help, but they might not speak our language yet, right? So I think we've done one email to the listserv, or maybe two already, that included some of that information. And we're working on additional content that's like that, just trying to bring advocates up to speed with what we're all doing. Let's see, anything else I want to say about coalition support? I just reminding everyone to join the coalition if you haven't already. It's only as strong, as the number of people we have on it. And the more people that join, the more effective the reach will be when we do have to call on people to, join a letter to the editor campaign or show up at a board meeting. The other thing I would note about My Right to Read overall is that Debbie McCula and I talk a lot about this. We really are trying to make sure that we're careful and staying focused on positive messaging that doesn't further stoke any issues for some of your libraries. So when Debbie reaches out to offer support, she's really careful not to insert herself into a library's material challenge in a way that could further incite people to organize against the library. That's a real concern some libraries have. And then the other side of that, right, is that we're just trying to make sure that we are ready to get more pointed in our messaging or advocacy when we need to, which so far we find is just, situational, right? We have libraries like what's going on in Hillsdale. Everyone hears about what's going on in Hillsdale, right? That's a library that needs some more pointed support probably and advocacy rather than just being proactive. So ultimately how we respond and provide support is just dependent on your library and the needs that you have at the time. So we're here to help however you see fit. And Cheryl's scrolling through right now the news section. Debbie's really good about keeping this up to date. I think it goes all the way back to October of last year, maybe. And it's basically every piece of news that's been published about Michigan libraries dealing with this stuff. Debbie's big on this idea too. All politics are local. So, we have national trends related to this stuff, right? But we're trying to stay focused on how we can help with what Michigan libraries are dealing with specifically. I think the last thing I'll mention, and then I'm happy to answer questions, is that the newest addition to the website, I think Cheryl was reviewing it just a moment ago already, is the Take Action page, which again is linked to from that main header on the site. The Take Action page includes 10 ways that you can take action at any time to support libraries and the right to read. Each of those pages or most of them also includes further information and templates, depending on what the ask is, so to speak. So for example, I like to point out to folks that we have presentation templates there now on the Take Action page. These are real templates from real Michigan libraries that have spoken to local civic groups, like local chapters of the League of Women Voters or Rotary groups, to help their community better understand, why libraries champion intellectual freedom. So if that's a presentation you're ever asked to give, to a local civic group, you can find some templates there for that. So really, I would encourage everyone just to look through the page here that Cheryl's previewing, because there's a ton of great information. There's also information, I think one of the 10 Take Action items is about starting a grassroots group locally to advocate for your library if you need that. Again, there's real world examples there from other Michigan libraries. The Free to Read Rochester group did some really great work in defending a school public library from dealing with material challenge stuff. And they've shared some information there to kind of help you get started. And I think the only other thing I would mention, and this is more of a Debbie McCula thing, so I don't have all the info, but MLA has recently made some changes to some of the funds that they make available to member libraries. They've combined a couple of them to create what they're called an advocacy fund. And there's a few different ways they use those funds, but one way allows Michigan libraries to reach out with requests for support related to material challenges and quickly get funding from MLA if you need it. So if there's like legal fees that you might have related to a material challenge, or other advocacy related, maybe you need posters or postcards, or, things like that. MLA can help you with that. So there's an application process for that on the MLA website. So that's kind of the really brief overview of all the coalition resources. And I'm happy to answer any questions that folks might have.
So I have a question, Dillon.
Yeah.
Not everyone is a member of the Michigan Library Association. And I'm wondering, and some cooperatives do contribute money for members. We're not doing that right now. We may consider that in the future. But so my question is that an issue for this? Because it's, if you're not a member of MLA, can you feel free to participate here?
Yeah, everything here is available to all Michigan libraries, including, a consult, emailing Debbie and she'll follow up with you and do what she can to help. It doesn't matter if you're a member or not. I don't know about the advocacy fund. That's where I thought you were going with this, Cheryl. But I can ask Debbie about that. And also probably most of us cooperatives are MLA members, right? And so maybe there's a way that we can help too. If an individual library can't apply for the advocacy fund, maybe we can on their behalf, but I can find that out.
Patty indicated that Wood TV 8 is doing a piece on what you can get from your local library, and she's doing a Zoom interview this afternoon. I also was interviewed by NPR about some challenging things we've had happening here. So the media's gotten a hold of it, and I think there will be, I don't know if it's going to stir up the waters or not, but it's, the media and up north is recognizing that there's some libraries that are being challenged. And so this is maybe going to become a bigger deal up here, because I know downstate it's been a bigger deal for a while. So
yeah, I think you're right, Cindy. I try and not to, I hate to sound cynical and don't mean to scare people, but I tell my small libraries, it's coming for you too. You have to be ready. It's everywhere right now. I mean, we have libraries as far north as Hancock, Michigan, which is practically the northern tip of Michigan's Upper Peninsula, that's dealing with material challenges. So it's all over the place.
Yeah, what I've been telling people, and I think everybody in this co-op has heard this 100 times, is the first thing you must do is make sure you have a policy. Make sure you have a policy about challenging materials. Make sure you have a very clean policy. And if any of you guys remember that was part of the policy, I think that Eric sent us for Mason County, that talked about a lot of that, had great language that we all could use, so that we all have similar language in our library policies to talk about reconsideration and how it goes about. Just, if you don't have something like that, that's pretty clean, I would think every library needs to review that right away, because get ahead of this. And I think this is my own personal opinion, but it's something to consider. We all get very defensive when somebody's trying to go after something that we feel very strongly about belongs in the library. But even when, like, I did the interview, my staff that heard it was just cracking up because they knew I was being as diplomatic as this person can ever be. And we have to recognize that there are a great many of these people that really do have concerns. And just because in a quiet room when no one's listening, we're, shaking our heads, we still have to treat them with respect and civility, as long as they treat us with respect and civility. But people have the right to question what we have. They don't have a right, in my opinion, to take away something just because they don't like it. But I know it's hard. If you're a passionate person like I am, you want to just say, are you kidding me? But yet, we put ourselves in a better place if we act like the grown-ups in the room, I guess.
Is what we're seeing on the screen right now, is that on the Baldwin Public Library? Is that on that Michigan Read too? Because I'm thinking about Luther. We have nothing.
Ooh.
And at least that I can see. I mean, it's very basic. And I mean, right now I've been trying to update the policies just to common practice isn't necessarily what the policies say. We have
Right.
policies because we're required to have policies, but we don't necessarily follow through on them. So I figured my job here was to try to update everything and get it to where it is. And I don't think we have even, I could be wrong, but I don't think we have even any kind of a policy like this which is why,
Reconsideration. Yep.
yes.
Well, it looks like it's on there.
The one that Eric sent out, that he kindly sent out so that we could revise it, and it has the same type of thing on it, has the revision, it has the request for
Reconsideration.
on it, and you can revise it to meet your own library. I just redid ours. Our board was very happy with it. And I was gonna mention that, this weekend on CBS, the regular news thing that they do on Sunday morning. They had interviewed library people and talking about, actually, it seems that that portion of the news anyway, some of them, and the one that I spoke to that I'm being interviewed, they seem to be trying to let people know what libraries have, that it's not just about the books and everything. They seem very positive, but we did have in our local paper just maybe 2 weeks ago a very negative piece, but it was an individual letter to the editor. So we're going to expect more of that.
Yeah, and answer to your question, Eric, it's true. I think Eric, basically, we were in a director's meeting, I think, when they directed us to the MLA site, which showed the ALA policy toolkit, and it had the policies on there. So Eric was just the one that actually made it so it fit his library, and we all, gave him credit for it. But he's right. The sample we used for the intellectual freedom and stuff like that came from ALA. And we were told in the meeting, go for it, do whatever you want with it, use it. In fact, it seemed to me Library of Michigan was saying, if more libraries have kind of standard language, it will make it easier in the long run if the standard language across the board is kind of the same, so people aren't getting different things. So Amy, you can look at the ALA site, but also I know personally, if you want to look at the Bel Air site, we have a policy, you just go onto our policies and it's in there. And you're welcome to copy whatever you want. I mean, I copied it from Eric, who copied it from ALA. So it's free to use. There's no copyright issues with it. Any other questions for Dillon or comments? Well, Dillon, thank you so much for your information. I love that we're hearing from other co-ops too. It makes us feel not so, I think Superior Land and Northland and MMLL, we all kind of feel like we're in the same boat because we're not in Detroit or Grand Rapids. And so it kind of feels good to hear from people that understand some of the idiosyncrasies of living in Northern Michigan. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. And I would just say, remember that if things get ugly with this at your library, you're not alone at all. You've got Cheryl, you've got your member library or your peers that are library directors. we just had Lance Werner from the Kent District Library drive all the way up to the UP.
Wow.
He offered to do it, right, just to talk to our membership in person about this stuff. And their library system, for example, is dealing with one challenge every week at least, and they've been doing that since October. So there is so much support out there. So if things get tough, reach out before things get tough to make sure
Yep.
you're in a good spot to handle this stuff.
And if you're a digital native, bookmark My Right to Read on your bookmarks bar, and that way it's readily available to you when you need to figure it out. Thank you, Dillon.
You're welcome. Thanks for
And you're
inviting
welcome
me.
to stay, but you're welcome to leave.
Okay, I'll step out so y'all can do your regular meeting business. Thanks again.
Dylan, you were one.